Hey everybody, Darren Yankee here with Echo Farms. So I've been asked to be on the panel for the Grassworks Conference. This is a farmer panel, and we'll be talking and discussing on how to extend your grazing season. And one of the questions that keeps popping up in my head that somebody's going to probably ask is how many dollars per day are we saving by not feeding stored feed and having the cattle out there grazing? There's many different things you can look at, and it all depends on your operation. For the one thing, if having the cattle out on pastures, whether you're feeding them out on pastures by bale grazing or on rolling hay, or if you're in a lot feeding your cattle. Because if they're out in the pastures, the cattle are placing their nutrients back out on the pastures all by themselves. In our situation here at Echo Farms, our beef cows and calves are out on the pastures. We take a bale of hay out during the winter months once we run out of forage to graze, and the cattle are still out there, right? They're placing the nutrients back on them pastures, right where it belongs. We're not having to bed them. We're not having to haul manure away from them cattle. So we're saving a lot more money even when we are feeding our cattle by having them out there on them pastures. So the first thing we got to come up with is how many bales would we be feeding our cattle if we weren't grazing? So per day, how many bales would we need? Well, we have wrap feed. Our feed gets put up at about 50% moisture normally in a round bale form. So we have round bales that are line wrapped, roughly 50% moisture. But that varies a lot in how many bales you need, because how much dry matter is in each bale is very critical when you're trying to figure out some of these numbers. So we have a fancy heater, and it has a fan on top of it. It's a pretty well glorified hair dryer. You have this basket, you put on the top, there's a screen on here. It allows the air to come up through the heater, blow air through this basket. And then we'll put the forage in the basket, and it'll dry it down for us. So first, we got to take our gram scale and we'll weigh out the forage. So we'll take the bucket. We need 100 grams of forage in the basket, which I did this already, so I'm just showing you what we have to do here. So you have 100 grams in here. You take it, you set it on top of our heater, and you dry this down. This process normally takes 30 to 40 minutes to do. Once it's dried down, you take the scale, you reweigh it again, and then you come up with how much moisture is in that feed. So this came back that this feed, which I was figuring was around 50%, just guessing at it, right, was 37% moisture. So we know right off the bat now that each bale of feed that we do have has more pounds of dry matter in it. So that means that we should need less feed to feed our cattle, less round bales. So for each 37% moisture, we have 63 pounds of dry matter. And we have a scale on our skid loader that's tapped into the hydraulics. So every time we go in and pick a bale up, we can stop if we want to and weigh that bale. So we do that once in a while, and our bales average around 1,800 pounds. These are just your normal 4x5 bales, but they are 100% alfalfa at 37% moisture, so they do have some weight there. So out of an 1,800 pound bale is 63% dry matter. So we have roughly 1,100 pounds of dry matter per round bale. So how many round bales do we need to feed our herd of cattle? So currently our one group of cattle has 32 cows that weigh around 1,000 pounds each, and we have 32 calves that weigh 550, 600 pounds. So around 50,000 pounds of total animal weight is out in that group. So for each 1,000 pound animal, so for each animal unit, which is 1,000 pounds, you need 2.5 to 2.6% dry matter intake. So you get that all calculated out, and we have approximately 1,300 pounds of dry matter that we need per day to feed that one group of cattle. So our bales have 1,100 pounds roughly dry matter in the bale, and the cattle need to consume 1,300 pounds of dry matter. So you could say we need just over a bale a day. It'd be really close, a bale a day. Now, how much do our bales cost? That's another question, right? So how much are we really saving by grazing instead of having this stored feed taken out to the cattle? Well, our bales normally are about $60 a bale, but then we have to line wrap them. The line wrapping costs $9 to $10 per bale, so we have about $70 in some really good high quality second cutting of alfalfa feed. So every day we are saving $70 by not taking a bale out to them cattle. But along with that bale savings, we don't have to take our tractor out there then and feed them that bale either. Normally when we are out making windrows of baled feed out there for the cattle during the winter months, we normally do it like once a week. We take a whole bunch of bales out and we place them out there for the week. That way we're not starting a tractor every day and having to go out and do it. So there's other cost savings involved with that. But on the other end of the spectrum, to have enough forage to get yourself through the winter months without having stored feed in your rotation is, we figure 2 to 3 acres of stockpiled pasture needs to get saved in fall. That's per animal, 2 to 3 acres per animal, to make it all the way through the winter months. And you have to have the weather cooperating with you. Weather is a huge factor when we're talking about grazing through the winter. Here in southern Wisconsin, our winters are all over the place. We can have a really warm winter, always around 30. You can have a really cold winter that's always more around 10 degrees. And that ain't the biggest issue. Is when you get the rainy winters and it gets muddy out there, or the snowpack gets really froze down and the cattle have a hard time digging through that icy packed snow. The one thing is you have to be moving them cattle on a daily basis yet, because once they go out there and they get that snowpack down, they can't dig through that anymore. They need to go to the next spot. So you need to have your fences all figured out and how you want to rotate your cattle around your farm in the winter months. You have to have your watering system figured out so they can always have access back to that watering location. Where we're located at in central Sauk County, Wisconsin, we have hills on both sides of our valley, and they're fairly steep. So this does make it more of a challenge in the winter months to get some of these fences put up and down these temporary lines, because we're talking fairly significant sloped hills, and just harder to walk when you get walking through the snow and things like that. Sometimes we got to take the snowmobiles out and put up and down the fences with the snowmobiles. Makes it a lot easier, because like the Rangers and UTVs have a hard time getting around during the winter months. And with the cattle out on the pastures, in our situation, whether we're feeding them baled hay out in the pastures or they're out there grazing, at least the cattle waste and no bedding is getting used. So we're saving on that year round, whether we're grazing or feeding stored feed. Now, if you have to have a situation where you have to bring them cattle into a lot and you're starting to bed them, you're starting to haul the manure away from the cattle, that gets a lot more money involved. Well, we need 2 to 3 acres of forage in our situation for grazing year round. That's a lot of money too. Land rents ain't cheap. To have them acres idle and only utilize them throughout the winter months, we normally start stockpiling feed in mid-August, so we have adequate growth on our pastures going into the winter. That's a little bit about that. Saving some feed for the winter and trying to figure out how much we're really saving is always a critical thing on your operation and what you want to do to make it work for yourself. Well, thanks for listening, y'all. Really appreciate the time you spent. You have a great one. Thank you much.